Her name was Tasha Evans, and her day began not with a gentle alarm, but with the thunderous sound of a 5-year-old tornado named Malik jumping off his bed and onto hers. "Mommy, the sun is awake," he proclaimed, his face inches from hers, his breath smelling faintly of the strawberry toothpaste he'd undoubtedly used a bit too much of. Tasha groaned, peeling one eye open to look at the clock. 5:47 a.m. 32 years old, black, beautiful, and so profoundly tired that she felt it in her soul. This wasn't the kind of tired a cup of coffee could fix. This was a deep, bone-weary exhaustion forged from years of doing it all alone. The next hour was a controlled chaos she had mastered through sheer necessity. There was the great sock debate. The blue ones with dinosaurs were in the wash, a tragedy of epic proportions. The battle of the toothbrush, which required a full rendition of the Brushy Brushy song. And the inevitable discovery that the last of the milk had gone suspiciously chunky. "We'll get more after work, baby," she said, pouring water over his cereal instead. Malik looked at the soggy flakes with deep suspicion. They burst out of their small Charlotte, North Carolina apartment into the humid morning air with approximately 90 seconds to spare before the school bus was due. Tasha smoothed down her blouse, a thrift store treasure she'd tailored herself, and took a deep breath, mentally preparing for the day ahead. That's when she saw it. A thick, glistening stripe of purple grape juice down the front of Malik's clean white shirt. "Malik, the juice box was for lunch," she cried, her heart sinking. His little face crumpled. "I was thirsty now," he whispered, his big brown eyes welling up. There was no time. The yellow bus was rumbling around the corner. She kissed his head, wiped his eyes with her thumb, and said, "It's okay, baby. It's just juice. Have a great day. I love you." She watched him climb onto the bus, her own shirt now sporting a purple smear from where he'd hugged her goodbye. This was her life, a beautiful, messy, perpetually sticky masterpiece, and it was about to make her 5 minutes late for work. Nexera was a mid-sized tech company where the floors were too shiny and the coffee was too bitter. Tasha's desk was situated directly outside the glass-walled office of her boss, Mr. Denton. He was a man who wore his expensive suits like armor and his disdain like cologne. He was already waiting for her, arms crossed, a look of profound disappointment etched on his face as she rushed in. "Late again, Miss Tasha," he said, his voice dripping with a condescension that made her skin crawl. He didn't bother to lower his volume, ensuring the entire open-plan office could hear. "Let me guess. Daycare issues? Traffic? A forgotten permission slip? Maybe if you spent less time being a mother and more time being an employee, you'd master the simple concept of a start time." The air went still. Tasha felt the heat of a dozen pairs of eyes on her back. She clenched her jaw so tight it ached, offered a tight-lipped smile, and simply said, "It won't happen again, Mr. Denton." She slid into her chair, her hands trembling slightly as she booted up her computer. She didn't want special treatment. She just wanted basic human decency. But in Denton's world, respect was a currency only given to those who looked like him, talked like him, and laughed at his painfully unfunny jokes about golf. Her phone buzzed. A text from her best friend, Chloe. "You okay?" Heard Denton's being a tool again. Tasha smiled faintly. "Just another Monday. Talk later." She looked at the photo on her desk. Her and Malik at the beach, his gap-toothed grin wide, his arms thrown around her neck. This was why she endured it. For him. For the dream of one day starting her own digital marketing firm. A dream that felt as distant as the moon on days like today. The office gossip network, faster than any internet connection, was buzzing with news. The big boss was coming. Blake Carrington, the billionaire CEO of their parent company, was making a surprise visit. The rumors about him were legendary. That he'd started as a janitor in one of his own buildings. That he'd built his empire from nothing. That he was shockingly down to earth, remembered everyone's name, and actually listened to his employees. Tasha filed him away in her mind as a mythical creature, like a unicorn or a reasonable politician. She certainly never expected to meet him. Around noon, desperate for a break from Denton's endless memos, She escaped to the break room to heat up her leftover spaghetti. She was staring at the microwave, mentally calculating how many hours until she could pick up Malik, when a voice behind her made her jump. Now that smells 1,000 times better than whatever they're serving in the executive cafeteria. She turned and froze. Leaning against the doorway was Blake Carrington himself. But he wasn't in a power suit. He was wearing dark jeans and a simple gray hoodie. He looked normal, approachable, and his smile was disarmingly genuine. "It's just spaghetti," she said, feeling suddenly self-conscious. "Spaghetti is deeply underrated," he replied, stepping forward to pour himself a cup of the notoriously bad office coffee. "I'm Blake." "Tasha," she managed, her voice thankfully steady. "I know who you are, sir." He waved a dismissive hand. "None of that in the break room. Break room rules. This is a suit-free, title-free zone." He took a sip of coffee and grimaced. "Some traditions are best left in the past, though. This coffee is a crime." She laughed. A real, unexpected laugh. "We've filed several complaints. It's like they're trying to fuel us with liquid bitterness." They chatted for a few more minutes. He asked her what she did, and she told him about being Denton's EA. He asked if she had kids, and her face lit up as she told him about Malik, and how he declared spaghetti a vegetable group all its own. Blake laughed, a warm, hearty sound that seemed to make the drab room brighter. Then his phone buzzed, and he gave her an apologetic shrug. "Duty calls. It was great to meet you, Tasha. Tell Malik I support his vegetable classification system." And just like that, he was gone. Tasha stood there for a moment, holding her now-hot container of spaghetti, feeling a strange sense of whiplash. The billionaire CEO was nice. She didn't think much more of it. But Blake Carrington did. The next morning, an email landed in her inbox that made her spit out her orange juice. From Office of the CEO to Tasha Evans. Subject: Temporary assignment. Ms. Evans, you have been selected to provide executive assistance to Mr. Carrington during his stay in Charlotte. Please report to the 12th floor executive suite at 9 a.m. today. Regards, Jordan Lee, executive assistant to Mr. Carrington. Tasha's heart hammered against her ribs. Her? Why her? Denton stormed out of his office, his face a thunderous shade of red. He'd clearly seen the email CC list. "What is this?" he hissed, leaning over her desk so only she could hear. "What did you do? Flutter your eyelashes in the break room? I will not have my assistant. My assistant. Poached for some temporary glorified errand running." Tasha met his gaze, a newfound courage bubbling up. "I believe the email came from the office of the CEO, Mr. Denton. I'll have my regular work handled by the end of the day." He stared at her, speechless for one of the first times ever. She gathered her notebook and pen, and with a calm she didn't feel, walked toward the elevator. The 12th floor was a different world. It was quiet, smelled of lemon and clean air, and the sunlight streamed through massive windows overlooking the Charlotte skyline. Blake was on the phone, but he waved her in, pointing to a sleek desk that had been set up for her. When he hung up, he grinned. "Welcome to Command Central. Ready to help me not get lost in my own building." For the next week, Tasha worked alongside Blake. It was the most exhilarating and exhausting week of her professional life. He was a whirlwind of energy and ideas, but unlike Denton, he valued her input. He asked her opinion on presentation flows, on which local restaurants would be good. For client dinners, on the morale of the staff downstairs. He listened, actually listened. He remembered Malik's name. On the third day, he arrived with a small, expertly wrapped toy, a limited edition model race car. "For the spaghetti vegetable advocate," he'd said with a wink. Tasha felt herself coming alive in a way she hadn't in years. She wasn't just an appendage to a horrible boss. She was a valuable part of a team. Downstairs, Denton was festering. He flooded her inbox with passive-aggressive questions and urgent tasks he knew she couldn't complete. He called her constantly. In one team meeting Blake invited her to, Denton openly rolled his eyes when she offered a suggestion. "A novel idea, Miss Evans," he'd said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. Perhaps once you're back from your special assignment, we can revisit the practicalities of the real world. Blake had gone very still. He didn't say anything in the meeting, but his eyes had narrowed slightly. The pressure was getting to her. One evening, after a particularly long day, she was putting Malik to bed. He looked up at her, his small face serious. "Mommy, are you sad at your new work?" "No, baby, of course not," she said, stroking his hair. "I love my new work. I'm just tired." "Mr. Denton makes you sad," Malik stated with the simple, brutal honesty of a child. "He's a mean man." Tasha's breath caught. She hadn't realized Malik had even picked up on his name. The realization that her work stress was leaking into her safe space with her son felt like a physical blow. She cried that night, silent tears of frustration into her pillow. The next day, Blake took one look at her and knew something was wrong. He canceled his next meeting. "Talk to me," he said, his voice gentle. "And don't say it's nothing. I've seen you handle a system crash and a caterer allergic to shellfish all before 10 a.m. This isn't work stress." And so, she told him. Everything. The constant lateness jabs, the belittling comments in meetings, the implication that being a mother made her less of a professional, the way he'd undermined her for years. She held nothing back. Blake listened, his expression growing graver with each word. When she finished, he was silent for a long moment. "Thank you for telling me," he said finally, his voice low and serious. "No one should have to endure that, especially not someone as capable and intelligent as you. You deserve better, Tasha. Much better." 2 days later, an official memo went out to the entire company. Effective immediately, Mr. Denton was being reassigned to a special projects role, reporting to a manager 2 levels his junior. It wasn't a firing, but it was a very public, very humiliating demotion. The office erupted. Some people looked at Tasha with newfound respect. Others looked at her with outright suspicion and jealousy. The whispers started almost immediately. "She sold him out to get ahead," someone murmured by the coffee machine. "I heard she cried to get Denton fired," said another in the bathroom. Then the note. A single, anonymous slip of paper left on her keyboard. Gold digger, the word hit her like a punch to the gut. She fled to the stairwell, sliding down against the wall as hot, angry tears streamed down her face. She had fought so hard, and this was what she got? She just wanted the harassment to stop, and now she was the villain? The door creaked open. Blake stood there, his face etched with concern. He'd clearly been looking for her. "I'm so sorry, Tasha," he said, his voice rough. "This is my fault. I moved too quickly. I made you a target." "No," she said, wiping her eyes fiercely. "It's theirs. Their pettiness, their jealousy. Not yours." He knelt down in front of her, his eyes searching hers. "You are the strongest person I've ever met. You are brilliant and kind, and you handle more before 9 a.m. than most of my VPs do all week. And I'm not saying this as your CEO. I'm saying this as a man who is completely and utterly in awe of you." Tasha's breath hitched. "Blake, I know it's fast," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "I know it's complicated, but I've never felt this way about anyone. You're not just a storm, Tasha. You're a force of nature." Her head was spinning. "My life is messy. I have Malik. I have baggage. I'm not a fairy tale, Blake. I'm a single mom from Charlotte with a mountain of bills and a 5-year-old who thinks socks are optional." A slow smile spread across his face. "Then let me be your optional sock finder. Let me be the one who helps you carry that mountain. Just let me in." And in that moment, surrounded by concrete and the faint smell of cleaning supplies, Tasha threw caution to the wind. She leaned forward and kissed him. The kiss in the stairwell wasn't a gentle, tentative thing. It was a release. It was weeks of pent-up frustration, of unspoken attraction, of fear and hope colliding. When they finally broke apart, the world felt tilted on its axis. The concrete walls of the stairwell seemed to hum with the energy of what had just happened. Blake rested his forehead against hers, his breath warm on her cheek. "I've been wanting to do that since you told me spaghetti was a vegetable." Tasha let out a watery laugh, the sound echoing in the sterile space. "This is insane." "The best things usually are," he replied, his thumb gently wiping away the remnants of her tears. "Have dinner with me. Tonight." Panic, swift and cold, shot through her. "Malik, I can't just—" "Bring him," Blake said immediately, without a hint of hesitation. "I want to meet him. Properly. Not just as the guy who gives him toy cars. We'll go somewhere kid-friendly. Lots of fries. I hear that's a universal kid currency." And that's how Tasha found herself, 4 hours later, sitting across from a billionaire in a booth at a diner called Mel's Griddle, while Malik enthusiastically dunked chicken tenders into a lake of ketchup. It should have been awkward. It wasn't. Blake didn't try to impress them. He asked Malik about his favorite superheroes and listened with genuine interest to a long, complicated explanation about why Blue Beetle was objectively better than Batman. He told a story about a time he'd slipped on a wet floor as a janitor and spilled a mop bucket on a very important executive, which made Malik laugh so hard milk came out of his nose. Tasha watched them, her heart feeling too big for her chest. This wasn't the script. Rich, powerful men weren't supposed to be kind. They weren't supposed to be patient. They were supposed to be like Denton. Later, after Malik was mesmerized by the dessert menu, Blake's hand found hers across the sticky table. "Thank you," he said softly. "For what?" "For letting me in. For trusting me with this." He nodded toward Malik, who was now carefully selecting which gummy bear to eat first. Felt too good to be true. And in her experience, things that felt that way usually were. The next day, a grainy photo of them leaving the diner was on a local gossip blog. The headline read, "Billionaire Blake Carrington's new mystery mom?" The comments were a cesspool. "She's pretty for a single mom. How much you want to bet the kid isn't even his? He's slumming it before he finds a real heiress." The vitriol was one thing. The effect on her son was another. Chloe texted her later that day. "Hey, some mom at school asked Malik if his mom was dating a prince. He came home confused. What's going on?" Tasha felt the walls closing in. The whispers at work became a roar. She was walking to her desk when she overheard. 2 women from accounting. Slept her way right to the top. Got Denton fired and took his place. "Please, she's just a stepping stone. He'll get bored of playing house and trade her in for a model by Christmas." That night, she called Blake, her voice shaking. "I can't do this. The stairs. The things people are saying. They're talking about Malik at school. It's too much." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then his voice, firm and clear. "Then let's stop the speculation. Let's make it so clear, so undeniable, that no one can question it." "What are you talking about?" "Meet me in the main conference room tomorrow at noon. Bring Malik." "Blake, what?" "Just trust me, Tasha." The next day, the entire office was abuzz. An all-hands meeting had been called with no agenda. Rumors flew. A merger? Layoffs? Denton smugly told anyone who would listen that Blake was finally going to announce his foolish pet project's cancellation. Tasha walked into the packed conference room, Malik's small hand clutched tightly in hers. Blake stood at the front, smiling at them. The second they reached him, he took her other hand. The room fell silent. "I called you all here for one reason," Blake said, his voice echoing in the hushed room. "To make an announcement. I found the most intelligent, resilient, and beautiful woman I've ever known. And I don't want to spend another day without making sure she, and the world, knows how serious I am." He got down on one knee. A collective gasp sucked the air out of the room. Phones were raised, recording. Malik, prepped and beaming, pulled a small velvet box from his pocket and handed it to Blake. "Tasha Evans," Blake said. His eyes locked on hers, shining with emotion. "You are the best thing that has ever happened to me. Will you marry me?" The room was utterly silent, waiting. Tasha looked out at the sea of faces. Shock, envy, joy, outright disgust on Denton's purple face. She looked down at Malik, who was nodding his head so vigorously she thought it might pop off. She looked at Blake, the billionaire on his knee in front of everyone, offering her not just a ring, but a fortress against the world's judgment. She didn't see the money. She saw the man who remembered her son's favorite superhero. The man who'd fought for her without her even asking. "Yes," she said, her voice clear and strong. "Yes." The room erupted. Some people cheered. Some clapped, stunned. Denton turned and stormed out, slamming the door behind him. The ring was a stunning emerald-cut diamond, elegant and classic. But as Blake slid it onto her finger, all she felt was the weight of his promise. The backlash was immediate and vicious. Before the day was out, Denton had filed a formal complaint with HR, accusing Tasha of leveraging a personal relationship to manipulate company hierarchy and eliminate a rival. He claimed her entire promotion was a conflict of interest. HR, terrified of a lawsuit from both Denton and Blake, had no choice but to launch an investigation. Tasha was placed on paid administrative leave until further notice. It was a masterstroke from Denton. He'd used corporate policy as his weapon, making it look like he was just a concerned employee following procedure. "This is my fault," Tasha said, crying on Chloe's couch that night. Malik was finally asleep, confused and worried about why Mommy was sad. "I was naive. I thought love could just be love." "Stop it," Chloe said firmly. "This is Denton's fault, not yours. Blake will fix this." And Blake did. He was a man unleashed. He hired the most feared employment law firm in the state. He didn't just defend Tasha. He went on the offensive. His lawyers subpoenaed years of emails, performance reviews, and financial records. They found everything. Denton had been funneling company funds to a dummy vendor for consulting fees. He had lied on his own expense reports for years. Most damningly, they uncovered emails where he had pressured a previous female assistant to go on dates with him and had threatened her job when she refused. He was not just a bully, he was a predator and a fraud. Denton wasn't just fired. He was escorted from the building by security, his reputation in tatters. Tasha was reinstated with a formal apology from the board. But the victory felt hollow. The damage to her reputation was done. The narrative of the gold digger who destroyed a man's career to take his place was too juicy to die easily. She stood in her beautiful apartment one evening, looking out at the Charlotte skyline. Blake had insisted she and Malik move in after the engagement. It was supposed to be a fresh start. Felt like a gilded cage. "I don't want to be a scandal," she whispered to Blake. "I don't want to be the woman who married her boss. I just want to be me." He wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her head. "Then be you. Be Tasha Evans. The fighter, the mother, the brilliant marketer. And let me love you while you do it." They married in a small, private ceremony in the botanical gardens. No press, no co-workers, just Chloe, a few of Blake's closest friends, Malik as the ring bearer, and Tasha's mother, who cried happy tears from start to finish. It was perfect. For 2 months, it was a fairy tale. Blake was a surprisingly hands-on stepdad, helping with homework and making pancake breakfasts on Saturdays. Tasha started sketching out business plans for her marketing firm, feeling hopeful for the first time in years. Then the call came. Her sister, Keisha, in Atlanta, her voice tight with panic. "Tasha, it's Mom. She collapsed at choir practice. They've taken her to Piedmont Hospital." The world screeched to a halt. Blake was on the phone instantly, arranging for his private jet to be ready within the hour. He packed a bag for her and Malik, handed her his credit card, and held her face in his hands. "Go. Be with your family. Don't worry about anything here. I'll be there this weekend." Her mother, frail looking in the hospital bed, tried to wave it off. "Oh, hush, all this fuss. I just got a little lightheaded singing How Great Thou Art. It's a powerful song." But the doctors were clear. It was a minor heart attack. She needed rest, monitoring, and a major change in diet and stress. Tasha didn't hesitate. "I'm staying," she told Keisha. Blake was true to his word. He flew down every weekend, a constant stream of support and stability. But distance, as they say, makes the heart grow doubtful, not fonder. The online gossip mills, which had quieted, started back up. Asterisk trouble in paradise? New Mrs. Carrington spends weeks away from billionaire hubby. Asterisk sources say Carrington marriage was a business arrangement from the start. Asterisk Tasha tried to ignore it, focusing on her mother's recovery. But then she saw the photo. Blake at a high-profile charity gala in Charlotte. And next to him, laughing at something he'd said, was a stunning blonde woman in a crimson gown. The caption read, CEO Blake Carrington and gorgeous guest enjoy a night of philanthropy. The woman's hand was on his arm. It looked intimate. It looked real. Her heart, which had been so full of hope, shattered into 1,000 pieces. The old insecurities came roaring back. This was how it always happened. This was what she got for believing in a fairy tale. She called him, her voice cold. Who is she, Blake? He sounded tired. Tasha, not this. Not now. She's Elena Rostova, a major investor in the new green tech division. She's also married to my CFO, David. They're our friends. I told you about this event weeks ago. You didn't tell me you'd have a date. She shot back, the jealousy a hot, toxic wave in her chest. She's not a date. Her husband was stuck on a conference call in Singapore. We posed for pictures together. That's it. She wanted to believe him, but the image was burned into her brain. The beautiful, sophisticated woman. The way Blake was smiling. It felt like a preview of her future. Always the awkward, out-of-place single mom from Charlotte, while women like Elena Rostova were the natural inhabitants of his world. When she returned to Charlotte a week later, things were different. A chill had settled between them. Blake was distracted, stressed about the launch of his new division. He was traveling more, coming home late, his mind clearly still in the office. One night, she made his favorite meal, shrimp and grits with homemade cornbread. She lit candles. She put on the dress he loved. He came home at 9, shrugged out of his suit jacket, and gave her an absent-minded kiss. I'm sorry. I already ate at the office. I'm just exhausted. I'm going to crash. He barely glanced at the table. The rejection was a physical pain. She nodded, wordlessly, and started clearing the untouched food away. As she picked up his jacket to hang it, a small, crisp receipt fell from the pocket. It was from an exclusive jeweler. The item description was for a diamond necklace. The price made her eyes water, but the details made her blood run cold. The style was described as modern, geometric, platinum setting. Tasha hated modern, geometric jewelry. She loved vintage Art Deco gold settings. He knew that. He'd bought her an Art Deco bracelet for her birthday, and the size was wrong. She wore a 16-inch chain. This was 18 inches. The pieces clicked together with a horrifying finality. The beautiful blonde investor, the late nights, the distractedness, the necklace that was perfect for someone who wasn't her. She didn't confront him. She was too proud, too terrified of having her fears confirmed. She decided to wait. That weekend, he said he had a critical last-minute meeting in Miami. He kissed her goodbye, his phone already buzzing in his hand. The moment the door closed, Tasha moved on autopilot. A cold, calm fury settled over her. She called Chloe. Can you take Malik for the weekend? Something's come up. She booked a flight to Miami. She used the credit card he'd given her, the ultimate irony. She checked into a hotel a block from his. She felt like a character in a bad movie, but the pain was horrifically real. The next afternoon, she saw them. There he was, on the rooftop terrace of a chic hotel bar. And there she was, Elena Rostova, the blonde woman from the gala. They were laughing, leaning in close over a table. They looked comfortable, intimate, happy. It was all the confirmation her broken heart needed. She didn't wait to see more. She turned, walked back to her hotel, packed her bag, and flew home to Charlotte. She was a whirlwind of motion. She packed her things and Malik's. She didn't take the jewelry, the clothes, anything he had bought her. She only took what was hers before him. She left her engagement ring and the receipt for the necklace on his bedside table. She left a note. I believed in you. I believed in us. But I won't be second place in my own life. Don't try to find us. She picked up Malik from Chloe's and drove to Atlanta, to her sister's house. She cried only once, when Malik asked from the back seat, "Mommy, when is Blake going to teach me how to surf?" He promised. Blake came home to a silent, empty house. He found the ring. He found the receipt. He found the note. His calls went straight to voicemail. His texts went unanswered. His emails bounced back. She had truly vanished. He was devastated. He canceled everything. He couldn't focus, couldn't work. For the first time in his life, the billionaire was powerless. His assistant, Jordan, finally staged an intervention. "Sir, with all due respect, you're not fixing this by staring at your phone. You need to go. You need to find her. And you need to explain." He finally got a hold of Keisha, who, after hearing the sheer desperation in his voice, reluctantly gave him an address. He flew to Atlanta and showed up at the modest marketing firm where Tasha had gotten a job as a junior associate. He looked nothing like the powerful CEO. He was pale, unshaven, his eyes red-rimmed. He held a single sunflower and the small, blue jewelry box. When she came out to the lobby, her face was a mask of cold anger. "How dare you come to my job? Tasha, please. 5 minutes. That's all I ask." She led him to a bleak courtyard behind the building. "Talk." He handed her the box. "Open it." Inside, nestled in velvet, was the necklace from the receipt. But it wasn't the modern, geometric piece described. It was a stunning, vintage Art Deco pendant, with a central diamond surrounded by emerald baguettes, on a 16-inch gold chain. It was utterly, perfectly her. "The receipt was for the setting," he explained, his voice ragged. "I was having the central stone I bought for you, the one from my mother's ring, reset into this. I was picking it up in Miami. Elena was there because her family owns the jeweler. She was helping me make sure it was perfect. She was in on the surprise." He showed her his phone. There were texts from Elena. Asterisk. "She's going to love it. Blake, don't be nervous. Asterisk and asterisk. Stop stressing. It's perfect for her." Asterisk. Tasha stared at the necklace, then at the texts, then at his broken expression. The world seemed to tilt again. "Why didn't you just tell me?" she whispered, her anger evaporating, leaving only a vast, aching shame. "Because I wanted it to be a surprise," he said, his shoulders slumping. "I wanted to be romantic. I was trying so hard to be the perfect husband, to give you this perfect life, that I became an idiot who kept secrets. And I lost you because of it." He didn't ask for forgiveness. He just stood there, waiting for her judgment. She didn't give it to him. Not then. She made him work for it. He spent weeks in Atlanta, renting a small apartment. He took Malik to the zoo and the science center. He helped her mother with her groceries and her medication. He showed up, consistently, humbly, without the flash or the power, just as a man who had messed up and was desperately trying to make it right. One evening, he was over for dinner at Keisha's, trying and failing to help Malik with a complicated Lego set. Tasha watched him, this billionaire CEO sitting cross-legged on the floor, scratching his head in confusion while her son patiently explained the instructions. She started to laugh. It was a real, genuine laugh she felt from her toes. He looked up at her, and the pure, unadulterated joy on his face at the sound was all the answer she needed. Later, standing on Keisha's porch under a blanket of stars, he said, "I don't want a perfect life, Tasha. I want our messy, complicated, sticky, beautiful life. I want you. I want Malik. I want to be a family." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "Then stop trying to be perfect. Just be here." They moved back to Charlotte, but it was different this time. It was a partnership. Tasha used the settlement from Denton's wrongful termination lawsuit, which Blake had insured, went entirely to her, to start her marketing firm, Evans Strategy. Blake invested, but she was the CEO. Her name was on the door. Her vision was the mission. For 3 years, they built their life. Tasha's firm thrived, specializing in helping small businesses and nonprofits. Malik grew into a funny, kind 10-year-old. Blake learned to leave work at the office and be present at the dinner table. They thought the storms were finally behind them. They were wrong. The letter arrived on a Tuesday. Thick, expensive paper. A return address from a law firm in Richmond, Virginia. It was from a woman named Clarissa. She claimed to have been in a relationship with Blake over a decade ago. She said she had a daughter. She said the child was his. She included a photograph of a little girl with Blake's exact same blue eyes and stubborn chin. The room swayed. Tasha sat down heavily at the kitchen island, the letter trembling in her hand. Blake came home to find her there, the letter on the counter. He read it, his face draining of all color. "Clarissa," he whispered, the name a ghost from his past. It was a few months, right after my first company went public. It was a chaotic time. I haven't spoken to her in 11 years. I swear to you, Tasha, I had no idea. The paternity test was positive. Blake had a 9-year-old daughter named Ivy. The press had a field day. Billionaire's secret love child. Scandal rocks Carrington family. Tasha's clients, the small businesses and charities, began to drop away. The scandal was bad for their image. Her business, her pride and joy, began to hemorrhage money. She had to lay off her small staff, including her best friend Chloe. The stress fractured them. They had their first real, screaming fights. She blamed him for bringing this chaos into their carefully rebuilt lives. He was consumed with guilt and the overwhelming task of getting to know a daughter he never knew existed. "Ivy is innocent in all this," he yelled during one argument. "And so is my business," Tasha yelled back. "And so is Malik. Your past is a bomb that keeps going off in our future." She took Malik and went to a hotel for a few days. The silence was deafening. One night, unable to sleep, she scrolled through photos on her phone. She stopped at one from years ago. Her and Malik, sitting on the floor of their old apartment, surrounded by bills, eating cereal for dinner. He was laughing. She was laughing. They had nothing, but they had each other. She had built her entire life on the fear of going back to that, on being in control. Blake's life, with its unexpected twists and turns and secret children, felt like a threat to that control. But looking at that photo, she realized she wasn't that scared young mom anymore. She was a fighter. She was a CEO. She was a wife. And a family wasn't a perfect, static thing. It was messy. It was complicated. It was showing up even when it was hard. She called him. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice thick with tears. "I got scared. I'm coming home." This time they faced the storm together. Tasha met Ivy, and her heart, against all odds, melted. The little girl was shy and sweet and looked at Tasha with a mixture of fear and hope. Malik, after a day of suspicious side eyes, decided having a sister was the coolest thing ever and appointed himself her personal protector. Tasha rebranded her firm. She leaned into the narrative. She called it Phoenix Rising Strategies. Her new tagline was "Marketing Built on Resilience." She shared her story, not the salacious parts, but the real parts. About being a single mom, about facing down bullies, about rebuilding. Her client base came back, stronger than ever. Women-owned businesses, in particular, flocked to her. Blake, meanwhile, learned to navigate the complex emotions of 2 children. He learned to braid Ivy's hair and to talk to Malik about video games. He learned that family wasn't about blood. It was about showing up, every day, with love. One Sunday afternoon, they were all in the backyard. Malik was trying to teach Ivy how to shoot a basketball. Blake was manning the grill, laughing at their terrible form. Tasha watched them from the porch, her heart so full it felt like it might burst. Blake caught her eye and smiled. A slow, easy smile that held all the history and all the hope they'd fought for. Malik scored a basket and yelled, "Did you see that, Mom? Dad? Ivy? Did you see?" Tasha and Blake's eyes met over the kids' heads. In that one word, Dad, they heard the echo of every struggle, every tear, every moment of doubt. And they knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that it had all been worth it. So, if you made it to the end of this roller coaster, tell me in the comments, what was the most shocking twist? Did you see the paternity test coming? And don't forget to like and subscribe, because everyone deserves a story that proves that even after the worst storms, The sun will always rise again.